Okay, welcome everyone to our webinar for this evening. Tonight I am very grateful to have Monique Levesque-Pharoah with us, who is a long-standing Toastmaster. As a member of Vital Words since 1994 and a charter member of We Believe in Winnipeg since 2009, she enjoys using her Toastmaster skills in all aspects of her life. Monique is a business owner of Unique Communications and Training. A highly experienced presenter and facilitator, Monique uses her energetic approach and real life workplace situations to bring training alive. Participants regularly comment on her ability to make training fun and meaningful. Monique holds a certificate in human resources management and has professional experience in employee development, communication and leadership, and especially enjoys facilitating conflict resolution strategies and was recently recertified as a conflict mediator with Mediation Services. Monique served on the Toastmasters International Board of Directors from 2016 to 18, helping set the strategic direction. And in August of 2019, she was invited to train region advisors conflict resolution strategies at the 2019 Toastmasters International Convention and is currently serving on the Toastmasters International District Conflict Working Group. Monique is the past board chair for the Canadian Mental Health Association, Manitoba and Winnipeg, and she also serves on the National Canadian Mental Health Association board. Monique understands the importance of stepping into leadership, not only for your own growth, but for the growth of others around you and the communities we serve. So, without further ado, I would love to welcome distinguished Toastmaster Monique Levesque-Pharoah to present tonight on personal productivity. Welcome, Monique.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you, Crystal, for thinking of me. I always like to get a sense of who's in the Zoom room with me. And because we've got such a nice little intimate group tonight, I would love it if each of you could share your name, how long you've been in Toastmasters, and what do you hope to glean from our time together this evening. And I will start with you, Jenny.
Thank you, Monique. So I'm Jenny Terry. I'm trying to think what all the questions you asked. I've been in Toastmasters since 2018, and from tonight, I am hoping personal productivity, I am always here to learn all about time management strategies. And if there's any ways that I can figure out my work life, one thing I will say is the bane of my existence is email. So if you have any tips for that, I'm here for it, and any other tips you have to bring. So I'm really, really looking forward to your presentation, Monique.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. I will go to Crystal next.
Hi, my name's Crystal Cobb, Distinguished Toastmaster. I've been in Toastmasters since 2016. And tonight, I love hearing Monique speak. She's awesome. She always has great tips. Anything for less stress, because life is just full of stress, whether it's work, personal, professional, all of the above. So I'm here for it. Thanks, Monique.
Love it. Thank you, Crystal. I'll go in the to my right, which is Laura Lee, and then Catherine.
Hi, I'm Laura Lee Grecian. I've been in Toastmasters since 2018, and I am looking for some of those time-saving tips as well. I've got a shift in my future, and I'd like to get on it rather than get run over by it.
Love it. Thank you, Laura Lee. And Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine Vesnes. I've been in Toastmasters since 2021. Tonight, I'm hoping to get some insight, tips, tricks on time management, because for some reason, each year I seem to be running out of time in my day, and I have no idea what I'm doing differently.
Oh, I hear you. So it's interesting how all of you, except for you, Catherine, joined just before, a couple years before the pandemic. Crystal, in your case, 4 years. Catherine, so you joined during the pandemic, correct? So your onboarding would have been far different from ours. Are you in a club that's now hybrid, or are you still meeting online?
Hybrid.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
interesting. There's not very many Toastmasters I've met who've joined during the pandemic. So every time I
Oh,
meet
mhm.
one of you, I'm like, oh, cool. So you started in this wild era of our history. And thank goodness we had members joining during COVID. So it's really nice to honor the members who took us through COVID that were there before. But it's a real treat to be able to meet someone who took on Toastmasters as part of their personal journey during the pandemic. So thank you for that. All right. Now, what's really hilarious, Jenny and Crystal know this already. Got a brand new computer last week, and for some reason, Zoom doesn't work. My husband has a computer that has the craziest mouse pad I've ever experienced. So I had to send my presentation to Jenny, and I'm having to use my husband's computer. So, Jenny, if you could load up the PowerPoint, and I'll let you know when to advance. Of course, you can advance right after the title slide. I will tell you that personal productivity, this is a session that I often deliver in a half day or a full day course. And so I've called some of the real high level. Oddly enough, there's a whole section on email, uh, but we'll touch on it afterwards. And one thing I did not add to it, because I'm kind of a baby in this area, is anything around generative AI, such as Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT. I can tell you I'm very late to the game in Canada. We are really trailing as it relates to the use of generative AI, but very, very late to the game. But I'm an avid fan of ChatGPT. If you want to explore, how much it can help, literally, it's like talking to a friend. Plug in everything you want. I've had it do things like do volunteer scheduling for me. I've had it actually answer a question with respect to donor concerns, because I work in philanthropy. I've had it do, I created a chat bot. Don't even know how I did it. I just followed the instructions from the person facilitating it. But show of hands, who is using generative AI or chat GPT or any of those, really advanced skills? So yeah, I'm here to tell you, just have fun and explore with it. It really is. It is a game changer as it relates to personal productivity. But I kept this presentation in its original form because I feel that it still has the tried and true methods for personal productivity. All right, you can advance the next slide, Jenny. So most people find that they wish they had more time in the day. This presentation will show us how to organize our lives and find those hidden moments. And a lot of times, people, they call it doom scrolling, or, they just go onto their device. What we're going to try and explore is ways, when you do find those hidden moments, to use them wisely. Oh, I love this quote. If you could go back, Jenny. I will be sharing this presentation. I do not know the quote off by heart. Perhaps we just, you know what? It looks like you're having difficulty going backwards. Let's just move forward. You're getting a copy of the slide deck. Let me know if you like that first quote as well. So we're going to talk about setting goals and using some basic project management techniques. We're going to talk about beating procrastination, because that often is something that takes up a lot of our time without us even realizing it. Next slide. So goal setting is critical. I'm going to sort of glaze over these because I wanted to keep them included, because without a goal, you don't know where you're starting, you don't know where you're going. And a lot of personal productivity does sort of hinge or hang on the idea that you have to have some goals. So you want to have goals whenever possible, whether it's financial, physical, personal development, relationships, spiritual. Having goals will really help you understand that being productive is going to get you to where you want to be. Time is the stuff that life is made of. And that's exactly it. I mean, how we spend our life really does make up our life. So a minute turns into an hour, turns into a day, a week, a month, a year. You get the idea. A lot of times people look at something that's, arduous and lengthy. And one of the things with personal productivity is the time is going to slip through your fingers, regardless of whether or not you're working towards a goal or not. So looking back, you're never going to regret, working towards your goals. Next slide. So the 3 Ps, there's positive, personal, and possible. One of the things that we know about our brains and about our lives is that if we have positive feelings about something, we're more likely to go for it. So whenever possible, you want your goals positioned in a positive way. So an example I would share is, let's say something, cleaning the house. You really don't want to do it, but it's a necessary evil, so to speak. So think of a way that you can make it a positive experience. Plug in your favorite tunes. In fact, if you have Spotify or a lot of the apps out there, they actually have, and I kid you not, and I use them, they do work. They actually have lists for cleaning the house. So you've changed it into a positive experience. You also want to make it as personal as possible. So if I use that same example, the personal would be, you know what, I get to come home to a clean house, and I'm not surrounded by clutter. And you don't want to be like, I'm going to clean my whole house underneath the fridge and stove, and I'm going to pull out the furniture, and I'm going to wipe down all the baseboards, and I'm going to have the house spick and span within the day. You want to make sure that it's a possible and realistic goal. Similar to, and I know, Crystal, you would have heard this, that Greyhound theory. I love the Greyhound theory. You have the Greyhound that goes around the track. You have a little pace rabbit. So that pace rabbit, if it's too fast, the Greyhound goes, yeah, I'm never going to catch that pace rabbit. They quit the race. They don't do it. Alternatively, if the pace rabbit is too slow, and the Greyhound catches the rabbit, it also then does not finish the task because it's too easy. So you want goals to be possible, but not so that they're not giving you some joy when you attain them. Next slide. We all know this. Maybe I shouldn't assume, but I feel like in Toastmasters, a lot of us understand that you want to have those specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. But one of the things that I think that a lot of us, especially in personal productivity, struggle with is understanding that we can be fluid with our SMART goals. So once we have a goal, and it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's timed, but that deadline is just a little too close around the corner, doesn't mean we failed. We did our best guess. We have to be flexible and adaptable. And a lot of times we get into that perfectionist mentality of, oh, we didn't get it done. But with personal productivity, as you'll see in some subsequent slides, it's not about getting everything done. Next slide. So you want to prioritize your goals. Just as a side, I had an English teacher who said that prioritize was not a word that was actually priorized, and now it's part of the English dictionary, which kind of makes me giggle. So when you're looking at your goals, you want to be able to focus on the ones that really matter, and you want to look at the ones that have the greatest impact. Or sometimes people will do the opposite and will be like the easy win, but you want to prioritize your goals in a way that makes sense for you. And you want to really consciously decide that. A lot of times in productivity, we let decisions and things coming at us. The last thing is the first one out. That sometimes that works well, but not always. So you really want to be making those conscious decisions around your goals. Around personal productivity, it is so key. Next slide. So you want to evaluate and adapt. A lot of times people have a zero or hero mentality, but really think about things in percentages. What percentage of my goal did I achieve? What would I do differently next time? One of the things that's so key with personal productivity is doing almost like a mini SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. when you're looking at something that you've done that's been project-based, really get into that habit of thinking critically around how did you do and what would you do differently next time? We know that, Kobe Bryant is a good example. It's a book. It's called Rewire. Forgetting the author's name, but it's an excellent book about neuroplasticity in our brains. And she cites Kobe Bryant and how, heuristically that muscle memory. He would take 800 shots before the practice session would even begin. And so he was constantly doing, what would I do differently in this scenario and that in order to make the basket. So when you're looking at ways to improve, you're actually increasing your personal productivity, because then you know what you do next time, and then you know what your next step is. And then as you constantly use that, I'm going to be critically thinking about a SWOT after something I've done and critically thinking about what I could do differently, you're going to get faster, and that's going to increase your productivity. Next slide. So the power of routines. So most people, you hear the word routine and it conjures up boring and repetitive life with every moment controlled and managed. But with routines, you end up having more energy to spend on tasks that bring you closer to your goals. Show of hands, who here in the Zoom room is, and maybe put it in the chat, because I don't know how my husband's click thing works. Who likes routines? Maybe show of hands, and let's see if I can click. Okay. Oh, good. So we're routine people. I used to not like routines at all. And then I think it was, I make a New Year's resolution every year. And every year it's something usually pretty challenging. I've never broken a New Year's resolution. There's been times I haven't been as good at it, but I've never broken them. But one year, my goal was to build more routines in my life. And that was maybe about 15 years ago. And I can tell you there's about 4 or 5 routines that still are in sort of my way of moving around the world. One of them is packing my swim bag for the morning the night before. Usually packing my lunch bag, deciding maybe not exactly what I'm going to wear, but at least I have everything that I want for 2 or 3 options. I'm a Gemini. I need some variety. I can't just have the one option. But an example of that routine is Steve Jobs actually wore the exact same thing every day because he then had more mental capacity for other things in his life. But those routines can be different for different people, but try to see in your life if there's ways to incorporate more routines. I know it was in the original presentation, because when it's a half day, there's usually stuff in here about email. I believe I plucked that out. But a good routine for email is to dedicate a time every day that you're going to look at your emails. And then in that calendar, so that people understand, they know that you are looking at emails. So block that time off in your calendar. And then in addition to emails, some people, this is a classic case of do as I say, not do as I do. I tried to do it. It wasn't how my brain worked, which is if you've dealt with an email, put it in a file, put it in a file. And then there's some people who have like 2 or 3 emails on their inbox. That's not how I roll. I like having it all in one place. It actually panics me to think that it's in another folder and then I can't remember the folder. But whatever it is that works for you, that's another sort of tip and strategy around email that works. And then another sort of best practice with email is to email yourself what you want the first 3 things for you to do the next day. And don't do anything else until those 3 items are accomplished. What that does is it sets you up for success for the rest of the day, because you got 3 solid wins. Now, the 3 things that you ask yourself to do should not be longer than 30 to 45 minutes in length. So it wouldn't be like, okay, first thing you're going to do tomorrow before you do anything else is going to do my whole budget or my strategic plan. That's not, you don't want to hold yourself to a project that big, but getting into the habit of that teaches your brain that you can be focused and get things done. And then you just naturally become more productive at giving yourself that time frame for doing those things first thing in the morning. Next slide. So what is a routine? You're identifying the task, you're identifying the time or the trigger. So an example for a trigger would be when someone sends me this information for work, that's the time I do B, depending on what that is. And then identifying the subtasks. A lot of times when we're looking at routines and things to do, we only think of the top item and we don't drill down and see all those other elements. So an example I would share is, let's say in event management, you've got to the header would be touch base with your partners. Okay, well, that sounds like an easy task, but when you drill down, you realize you got to check to see which partners have paid their invoices. You got to check which partners have sent in their logos, and you got to check in which partners need to send in their ads. That's a lot more than just touch base with your partners, as an example. The reason it's important to identify those subtasks is because then you really understand the expectation of the time it's going to take, which may sound silly, but it can be very stressful when you think you've got a task that should only take 10 minutes. Now you're in minute 40 and you're thinking to yourself, touch base with the partners. Why is this taking so long? So putting down those subtasks are important. Next slide. So scheduling yourself, routines and rituals should form the framework of your days at home and in the office. We're going to explore how to schedule those tasks and activities in the most efficient way possible. But before you move to the next slide, there's one story that I absolutely love. A leadership expert, Robin Sharma, was in a group of, very high-powered CEOs. And he asked the question, how important is family? And everyone puts up their hand. They're like, family's the most important thing. He then goes, okay, can I have, just take people's phones. You would look at their calendars and you'd be like, okay, show me where in your calendar when you've had holiday time or just family time alone. And it was revealed that many of them, while despite putting their family first, felt that they were contributing to the family by, guess what? Overworking and, making sure they brought home the bacon, so to speak. So what he said is don't tell me something is important to you unless it's in your calendar. And that always kind of stuck with me. So even if it's something like, time with your kids on a Saturday, put it in, honor it, make sure that people understand that that's your priority. Next slide. So some personal routines. I think that sleep hygiene, that's the new term that people are using for getting the proper amount of sleep. There's been lots of back and forth about what's best practice. Some people have said it's best to get 8 hours of sleep at night. That's actually not true. We all have different circadian rhythms. We all have different sleep needs. But they all unilaterally say that if you establish a routine for going to bed about half an hour before you sleep, that you actually do fall asleep faster and you stay asleep longer because of that routine. Meals, take some time each weekend to plan for the next week. I've had so many people say that this is a real time saver. This is not one that has stuck with me. I did do this during the year of my New Year's resolution around building routines, but some carryover is that I do plan the night before, usually for lunch. And so that has been a help. Show of hands, do any of you do that, weekly, I'm going to go grocery shopping, plan my meals, and have an easier week for it? Crystal, can you share with us what that looks like for you?
It's usually a group effort between Adriana, my daughter, and I. We kind of talk about what we might want to have. We make sure that meat is very important in my family. So we make sure that things are out of the freezer the night before so that we're able to make it. We don't typically prepare and like cook everything on the weekend so then we can eat, but we kind of know what we're having every day and try to have leftovers for lunch to bring to school or work. So
Yeah,
yeah,
leftovers are such a time saver. Thanks for
big
sharing
time.
that. I think that's where I've landed often is you get a sense of what you're going to have, but you don't do the whole meal prep. I like that. Now, this is the other thing about personal routines. People say, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time for that. But it really does, release endorphins. It actually reduces stress. It actually can help prepare you to be more productive. Sometimes people will say to me, if I'm not a runner, if someone were to take a gun to my head and say, run for your life, I'd be like, shoot me. It's less embarrassing and it's quicker. I'm a swimmer. I like to swim, but I do know a lot of people who run, they'll say they'll work out their problems as they're running. Some people from a personal productivity is they'll think about their problem before they go to bed. They'll write down the question and they actually wake up with an answer because they've sort of dreamed it up and they've, their subconscious has worked it through. Show of hands, is there an exercise that you like to, what would that be? Just unmute your mic and tell us what exercise, does it for you and helps you be more productive.
So I always find this concept that exercising reduces stress and makes you feel more productive. I actually feel stressed out exercising. So I feel the need, and I do most mornings of the week. I exercise before I go to work. But I find that exercising in the morning before I go to work, I'm rushing to get to work. I don't get to work as early as I used to. And it's like changing the
Interesting.
mindset that, okay, so I'm working in the morning and I'm not getting to work till 9 and I don't get out till 5:30. That's okay because I used to get to work 7, 8, get out at 5 and then work out and then an hour and I'd get home at
Interesting.
7. But for some reason, I don't know, but
That is
but if I'm not
interesting.
working out in the morning now, I'm not working out in the evening, so I have to do it in the morning.
Yeah, they do
Isn't
say
that
that.
just like messed up?
No, that isn't messed up. I actually understand that sort of rationale. That makes sense because you're so used to being at work early, so you're feeling as you're working out like, oh, I could be at work getting stuff done, even though you stayed later as a result and had to work out afterwards. When you were working out afterwards, at least work was done. But you probably worked out less because we know that after a hard day's work, your propensity to doing anything else other than vegging and, just taking care of like family and meals and all of that is going to go down. So I think you're further ahead, but I kind of understand it. So I wonder if maybe, because they say that there's, believe it or not, 60,000 negative thoughts that we have going through our brain every day. And yes, that's true. 60,000 negative thoughts. I'm wondering if you can try and rewire your brain. What, just as you're starting your workout to be like, I'm only focusing on working out. I'm only focusing on this. The minute you find your brain, your brain sort of going, oh, I could be at work. Nope. I'm here in the present. I'm here working out. And I'm wondering if over time there'd be some new neural pathways that would be created for you to take away the stress. Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good reminder to try to be in the present moment and just focused
Yeah,
on what I'm doing. And it's
totally.
not like I have to be to work that early because most people I work with or do work for, they're not getting in till 9, 9:30 anyway. So, it's,
Yeah, give
I
yourself
don't
that
know.
space. That's
And I've
funny.
been doing this for, probably 5 years now.
Hilarious.
It's not like
I would,
this is a new switch.
right. It's not like this is a few weeks old. That's funny.
I
Anyone
know.
else? What's their exercise that kind of you feel helps you to be more productive?
Just walking for me. I like to walk in the morning and I do find like I'll think about things or not. Sometimes I read or like listen to audiobooks. And so I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just kind of enjoying listening to the story or whatever. But I do find that when I get a walk in, I feel better going into the day.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Crystal, what about you?
Well, I have a German Shepherd who needs a lot of exercise, so it's always walking the dog, whether it's in the morning, at lunchtime if I'm working from home, or after work. I like walking when it's nice and sunny and bright, and I've got my sunglasses on and the tune's in, and he's sniffing, and we're walking, and we've just got the road ahead of us because I live really close to a dirt road that's not very busy, so we like to truck it on that and just take in the world.
Love that. They do say from a psychological standpoint, it's really good for us to get in a space in wide open spaces whenever possible, and it actually reduces anxiety. So that's cool. Now you're going to laugh. I cannot, thank goodness my memory works. Laura Lee, I can't see you, but what's yours?
I would have to say that I'm more into stress reduction exercises, something like yoga type exercises, because that, any of the stress that builds up because of what I'm working on, kind of like, so I'm more prepared to go into whatever I'm working on.
Love it. There's one slide where I'm going to ask you to weigh in on something. All right, next slide, Jenny. So we talked about, oh, I did have a bit in there. Excellent. So set aside a specific time for email. Oh, there we go. I've talked about the tasks in organized manner. Set up a system for maintaining your task tracking system. Next slide. So block off quiet time to work at your desk. A lot of times people say, I have an open door policy, and then they wonder why they can't get anything done. It's perfectly okay to say, okay, this is the time where I need quiet time. Leave the best time for callers to call on your voicemail. It's so helpful. I love it when someone has a voicemail that says something like, I'm busy in the morning, best time to reach me at is, and they give a block of time. It's so helpful to sort of like minimize those distractions from those calls. Strictly adhere to start and finish times for meetings. That's a big one. There's that, end of the meeting creep that can often happen. This is the thing about Toastmasters that we're so good at. Meeting is adjourned. It's announced. Everyone knows you can go if you want. Really important to translate that into your work settings and prepare a meeting agenda in advance. So many times in work, I can't tell you, I'm sure as Toastmasters, we all can relate. You go into a meeting and there is no agenda and you're like, okay, just how many items are we covering anyways? And when are we really going to end? So it's a real time saver to have that in advance. Next slide. So you want to develop a tracking system for your tasks. And I love this method of just looking at ways to put the things you need to do in different buckets. Urgent and important obviously gets done first because, it's both important and urgent, pretty obvious. Then there's important and not urgent. Then there's urgent but not important. I generally like to really critically think about, if it's not important, why is it urgent? And ask yourself that question. A lot of times people will realize maybe it's not that urgent or it can be delegated to someone else. And not urgent and not important. One lady said to me, she goes, yeah, but once I started using the system, there were things on my list that never got done. And I said, is your world worse for it? And she thought about it. She goes, not really. Then take it off the list. Be brave. There's some things that you think need to be done every year, like my mom, spring cleaning. I'll be honest with you. I spring clean every 2 years. It's a lot for 1 year. There's certain areas of my house that, I don't bother with behind the fridge. I don't do every year anymore. I used to, I don't. Those dust bunnies are not that much worse for wear if I wait another year. But think critically about the things in your to-do list. Next. So keeping yourself on top of tasks, even if you've got a plan in place, it's important to keep adjusting your plan so you can stay in control of your time. We will explore some ways to help you stay on top of your to-do list. And I love this quote. It's anonymous. Ordinary people think merely of spending time. Great people think of using it. Next slide. I love this one, the 1 minute rule. You just take 1 minute. If something is bouncing around in your head and you realize it's only going to take a minute to do it, just do it. Then sometimes, I mean, it would drive me bananas when this is what I would do to myself. Oh, I got to RSVP to that wedding. Oh, I got to RSVP to that wedding. I got to RSVP to that wedding. And then I realized I'd spent an hour over the course of a week. I mean, I'm a wedding officiant. It would take me less time to officiate the wedding than it did for me to ruminate on whether or not to RSVP to the wedding. And so once you've made a decision on things like that, do it right away. Just get it off your plate. Then it's not using up that other brain power you could use for other things. So this might fit into you, Laura Lee. This is not the one where I want you to weigh in specifically, but take quick stretches. Get up, walk around. I think what's really fun is we often will have watches nowadays that will be like, oh, you need to move. Listen to that watch, because that quick stretch will actually save you time later. Next slide. Now we expand it, the 5-minute rule. So you set a timer, you do things like clean your desk, work on a stuck project, or clear out your inbox. But you really want to kind of stick to that 5-minute rule, because then you can get, it's like doom scrolling. You get into that rabbit hole. So you only do what you can do in that 5 minutes. And then you apply that 5 minutes the next day. And then all of a sudden, you're noticing cleaning your desk doesn't take as long because you're doing it more regularly. Oftentimes you've worked on a stuck project, getting unstuck. You're off to the races now, and clear out your inbox will just naturally happen. Next. This is one of my favorite productivity and time-saving techniques. This for me is the magic sauce for combating procrastination. So it's a time management method developed by Francisco Cirillo in the late 1980s. It's named after the tomato-shaped kitchen timer, and the Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. It aims at enhancing focus and productivity by breaking work into intervals. So if you look it up online, there's different ways that people use the Pomodoro technique. I can tell you how I use it. I put on a little kitchen timer. I actually do. I don't think it's, no, I don't know if it's in that cupboard. It might be in the one across, so I won't show it to you. But I literally put it on for 20 minutes, and I will do things like, okay, I'm going to organize this drawer. And after 20 minutes, I force myself to stop and I take a 10-minute break and I do something completely different. I'll be honest, sometimes it's watching really bad reality TV. And then I go back and I do another, say, 20 minutes. The cool thing about it is it allows me to get to things that I really don't like doing. Sometimes I'm a sewer, I love to sew, and I'm also the disease to please. So sometimes I have a pile of things that I'm doing for people, whether it's hemming jeans or, fixing that hole in someone's shirt or putting on a button. I'll be like, okay, the Pomodoro technique works, because then I start on it, and then I'm off to the races. I've become unstuck. What this does is it increases your focus and it reduces mental fatigue. And Jenny, if you could change that before you send this slide deck along, that would be great. Maybe I got too tired. I got so tired I didn't want to even finish the word. All right, next slide. And now I've lost you guys again. Geez, I went to go fix it. Darn it, bear with me. Okay. There we are. Expand this. I'll click over here and then expand it again. I swear to goodness, I don't know how my husband's. Oh, I was there. This is not good for personal productivity. There we go. Okay, so Laura Lee, this is where I wanted you to weigh in. So what do you do when you feel like you're sinking? Take a physiological sigh. What a physiological sigh comes from yoga. It's a very specific, a lot of people will say, just take a deep breath. This is different from taking a deep breath. You take in a deep breath through your nose if possible. Then just when you think you can't breathe in through your nose anymore, you take another quick intake through your nose, and then you release through your mouth. So it looks like this. And it looks a little funny, but it really does do a lot around getting you out of that place where you feel like everything's drowning on top of you. So Laura Lee, have you heard of the physiological sigh? Have you used it in yoga? Talk to us.
I have heard of that technique, but I have not used that one. I know I've heard of people using it. Another thing that you can do is when you, and I don't encourage to take a deep breath, because when you take a deep breath, you're actually going into that stress part of your body. Like your body wants to just like rear and tear and tackle whatever it's up against. So
Yeah,
it's more like taking a normal breath, but when you breathe out on the out breath, allow it to come out slowly and let it go as long as you can make it go, because that's the part that actually calms us down, is the out breath.
I
So
like that. I like that. In the physiological side, they do ask you to do that to the point where you think you've emptied out every bit of air from your lungs, correct?
yeah, you can do it that way, yeah. And I
Yeah,
wouldn't necessarily push it, just do what's kind of natural for you.
and comfortable. Yeah, as we have people falling and passing out
Yeah.
altogether.
Our
Love
breath,
it
our breath is very tied to stress.
completely. So making a list of all the tasks that are outstanding, one of the things that is actually proven to help us with our outlook of what we've done and how productive or unproductive we may be is, let's say you've got your list of outstanding things to do and you realize, oh, there's a few more things that I did. And a lot of people are, well, I don't need to put it on the list. Studies have shown if you put it on the list and put a little check mark or cross it off or do a squiggle, it actually boosts your understanding of how productive you really are and reduces some of the stress. I love doing that. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I already dropped that off at the dry cleaners. Check. Don't I feel good? It's like score. Look at your calendar in a way that's going to be helpful to you. Some people swear by looking at a week at a time. Some people look at a month at a time. Some people look, hour at a time or day at a time. But look at your calendar in a way that's helpful to you. Identify the 3 most important things that you want to do at any given time is so helpful. And start work on the most critical item. Next slide. So tackling procrastination. Procrastination is delaying a task that should be a priority. The ability to overcome procrastination and tackle the important actions that have the biggest positive impact in your life is a hallmark of the most successful people out there. How soon, not now, becomes never. And that's so true. It's like back to that bucket where critical and important and not critical and not important. You really want to make sure that you are having the biggest impact with the decisions around the things you're spending your time on. Next slide. So why do we procrastinate? One of the things is no clear deadline. I mean, I think we've all been part of those teams where you just know that the update meeting, everyone did that, the things that they were accountable for, they did them within a few days before the next meeting. Those deadlines can be very, very motivating for us. A lot of times we don't have the adequate resources available. There's a study, it's called the Gallup Q12, and it's 12 questions aimed at gaining an understanding of whether or not your workplace is an engaged workplace. And one of the key questions they ask is, do I have the tools to do my job? So asking yourself that critical question, do I have everything I need in order to accomplish this task? And if the answer is no, you've probably been procrastinating, but you feel bad about it because you haven't really thought critically about why you're not doing it. Sometimes it's information from someone else. Maybe it's a piece of equipment. Maybe an iPad is what you need instead of having to wait to go back to your desk for a laptop. Whatever it is, think critically about those resources, because that can be the juggernaut that's keeping you in that procrastination mode. And tasks feel overwhelming. Whenever possible, try to break it down into chunks. It seems so simple and it makes common sense, but it's amazing how many times we don't do that. A task feels overwhelming. We don't think to slice and dice it. And also remember that it's great to be able to ask for people to help and ask for those resources. And if there's a way you can delegate some of it, it's fantastic and often will help with that procrastination. Next slide. So 9 ways to overcome procrastination. Delete it. Doesn't need to be done. Get rid of it. Ask for advice. A lot of times, someone will have done what you've done already. R&D, rob and duplicate. See if there is a way to do it quicker. Make sure your deadlines are clear. Make sure that you have a deadline that's reasonable. Remember back to that pace rabbit, you want it to be attainable. You want to be able to delegate whenever possible, chop it up, which we've talked about. Reward. Honestly, okay, this is kind of an embarrassing story, but how are we doing for time? Yes, I have time to tell this story. It's not my proudest moment, but here it goes. When I worked at the telco, which was about a 15-20 minute, about a 10-minute car ride, 15-20 minute bus ride, for those 5 years of my life, I took the bus to work. It was just simpler, it was cheaper, and it was just made a lot of sense. And the bus stop is about a block and a half up. And at that time in our marriage, my husband had Tuesday, Wednesdays off. So on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I would get to the bus stop, no problem. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, however, I knew that my husband was home. And while he'd gotten in late the night before, because based on the shift that he was working, I knew that if I was in a pinch, I could get a ride to work or a ride to the bus stop. And so Tuesday and Wednesdays sort of became a pattern. And my husband said, "Are you ever late for work?" I'm like, "How dare you ask me that question?" So that's one thing, I'm never late for appointments or for work. It's ingrained in me to be early. And I said, "How dare you ask me that question?" Like, oh my God. And he says, "Well, you're late every Tuesday, Wednesday for the bus. What if I wasn't here?" I said, "But you are here." He says, "But then I get woken up and I can't fall back asleep." He says, "Can't you pretend that I'm not at home?" And I said to myself, "But what would be in it for me? Here I'm being rewarded by being late because then I get, a car ride to the work with you and have a nice visit or a ride to the bus stop." He says, "Okay, if you can go a whole month without waking me up, you'll get a treat." Ladies and gentlemen, there's no gentleman here, but ladies, it worked. So each Tuesday, Wednesday, I would, get up early. I wouldn't bother him. He would be asleep. Months and months and months go by. I got the U2 CD. I got perfume. I got one of my favorite books. I got all these wonderful treats. It is the last Wednesday of the month, and I'm running slightly behind. And I fall down the stairs. Do, 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 do. I get to the bottom. My husband wakes up. He goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I yelled, "I'm okay. I'm okay. No, 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 don't take me. It's treat day." My husband had to tell me that I would still get my treat, despite the fact that I pushed it too far. Where I'm going with that is rewards do make a difference. So think of ways to reward others when they overcome procrastination, or reward yourself. Another thing that really helps that is not on here, but I find it incredibly powerful, is coming up with an accountability partner. If you say to someone else, "This is what I'm striving to do by such and such a date," having someone else understand that you've verbalized that, and they understand how important it is to you, they can help hold you accountable. So that can be really, really helpful. Just do it now. Just get it out of the way. The 15-minute rule, which we talked about, just get those things done and remove distractions. A lot of times, the distractions, we know that our brains, if we've been distracted, it takes 15 minutes to half an hour to get back into that state of flow. So by removing distractions in the first place is going to help you not to get distracted and then not to procrastinate. Next slide. Eat that frog. Past international president Michael Notaro does a whole presentation on this, but it is so true. We tend to put off the things that we don't like to do. So you have a whole list of things to do. If you eat that ugliest frog first, the rest of your things that you have to do are less painful because you've done the most painful one first. Next slide. Practice self-compassion. Really try not to be too hard on yourself for past procrastination. The toothpaste is out of the tube. And I find that people are really hard on themselves when it's procrastination on a larger scale. So an example would be, I'm sure we've all heard it, I wish I'd started Toastmasters earlier in my life. Or I wish I'd gone back to school. Da, 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 da. Oh, I wish we'd bought that house then, or whatever it is. Usually those big life decisions, we can be really hard on ourselves, but really think about being as kind to yourself as possible. Learn from it and focus on moving forward. Next slide. So our time is coming to a close. Hope you've enjoyed this journey together. And I hope it helps you to improve your personal productivity. And I hope it's just beginning for you. And the next slide, I have words from the wise, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. So next slide. So even if you are on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. I love that. That one cracks me up. Risk more than others think is safe. Care more than others think is wise. Dream more than others think is practical. Expect more than others think is possible. When you have a big dream, you get excited about that dream and you tend to procrastinate less when you're passionate about something. So try to find the passion in the things that you want to get done. Back to you, Jenny, and I open it for questions.
Thank you so much, Monique. I loved this presentation, and I did get the opportunity to hear a presentation from you in the past, which talked about some similar time management strategies. So if I could start with my question, I have lots of notes here because I am all of the things, a procrastinator, and I feel like all of these tips are amazing. I really loved the idea of doing 3 things in the morning. So one of the things I'm just thinking right now is, how do I remember all of these strategies?
That's a really good question. So we know that from brain, neuroplasticity, it's best when we learn something that we apply it. So what I would do is, once you have the slide deck, is pick the top 3 things that you want to implement and only focus on those for at least a number of weeks before you move on to the next. And then, because we know we do things when we're successful at them, and we want to avoid things that are dangerous for us, like it's right back to caveman days, we will automatically remember where that bear was in that cave. We want to avoid it. So figure out where those bears in your cave are for your life. Where are the real sticky points? Where do you procrastinate with most? I'll give you an example. I used to be really bad, like I mean really, really bad with my expenses. You're in fundraising, you're taking people out for lunch and dinner. And I had a motto that if I didn't get a yes from a meeting, I didn't put in my expenses. So what would happen is that would be my automatic default to not do my expenses, because I'm like, well, I don't know if that person's going to donate at that time, say to the Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation. I was 6 months behind on my expenses. And so, of course, in my review, they're like, wow, you're raising great money. We just love working with you. Finance team hates you. What? The finance team literally hates you. I'm like, why? Because your expenses, like, you really got to improve on that. So I made a laser focused, and I told them my theory, and they're like, we would rather you put in all your expenses. And if you feel comfortable, you can make a donation for all the times you took people out to coffee and they didn't say yes, and you can get a tax receipt for that. So where I'm going with that story is, what is that bear in that cave? For me, it was my expenses. Work on that first and get that win.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Monique? Or comments?
I think Catherine had one in the chat from earlier, didn't you, Catherine, about, oh, you were asking about the
Oh,
chat.
yeah. Yeah, I was wondering how she used Chat GPT for scheduling.
Oh, it's the best. So what I did, so where I work now, Peer Connections Manitoba, we even did a work. Oh, it's so cool. So for scheduling, we have all these different shifts. We needed so many, I think it was like 52 volunteers. And I literally said to ChatGPT, I need, and the reason I needed at least, I think there was at least 40 of the volunteers needed to come from this one organization so I could get a $5,000 grant. So I literally, and I think it's called the co-star method. And Jenny, I can follow up with that tomorrow. I have it written down in my Bible at work. But using the co-star method really sort of tells ChatGPT exactly what you want. So you think of the content, you think of your audience, you think of the results, you think of the type of communication you want. You add in everything that you want. And in this case, I needed 50 volunteers, 40 for this grant. And I needed it to be in what it thought would be good time frames. So it broke some days in an hour and a half, some in 2 hour time slots, and it just generated. And then I said, can you please put it into Excel? And it said yes. And then it didn't have, all the columns I wanted, because I wanted name, and it said name and contact information. And it just put name and contact information. I said, no, name, email, phone number, and it changed it. It's AI. It is a game changer. Game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, we are launching a Copilot at work, which works with
Are you?
Microsoft. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is
So
incredible.
I know, but you almost like have to be a programmer to get it to do what you want it to do. I mean,
No,
to learn.
I'll send you the co-star method. It's really quite intuitive. You can
Yeah.
and you can plug in, like, for example, just go into ChatGPT and say, put together a 3 paragraph bio, and it'll glean stuff from the internet on you, and it'll actually put together a pretty decent bio.
On
It's
yourself.
on yourself if you've got
Yeah.
stuff on the internet. Yeah,
Huh, that would be interesting to see what it would pull up on
it's
me.
fun. It's really cool.
That does sound fun. Now I'm going to have to try that.
I
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, it's really cool. It learns your voice. So if you sign into ChatGPT or any of the generative AI um, tools out there, it will keep the history of what you like, and it starts to sound like you. It's really bizarre.
Hmm.
Yeah, really neat.
Okay, well, it looks like we just have a couple of minutes left. If no one has any burning questions, I would, if anyone is interested in receiving the PowerPoint, if you could leave your email, you can leave it in the chat privately to me, or leave it in the chat if you're okay with other folks seeing it, and I will make sure to send that off to you tonight. But just big thank you to you, Monique. This is incredible, and like I said, I loved all of the ideas, and so now it will just be figuring out my top ones to put in place tomorrow right
Love
away,
it.
and then remember to refer back to the PowerPoint, because this has been incredible. So thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing all of these great ideas with us. We really truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the emojis, because I'm on my husband's computer. I'm not going to be able to do the reactions, but I do know how to do them on my own computer when computer works with Zoom. I've got to go to Best Buy. Geek Squad. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.